Aye, it's Tuesday, February the 22nd, and I continue to read and wonder my way through the book of Genesis. And today it's Genesis 41, verses 14 to 36. Big chunk of the story. Story we started yesterday with the beginning of this chapter. And in that we discovered that Pharaoh is having troubling dreams. Nobody can seem to make sense of them. And then his cupbearer goes, "Oh, wait a minute. You know, when I was in prison 2 years ago, there was this Hebrew fella who was sort of taking care of me, also a prisoner, and he could interpret dreams." So finally, word of Joseph has made it to Pharaoh, and that's where we pick it up. So it's Genesis 41, 14 to 36. Then Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and he was hurriedly brought out of the dungeon. And when he'd shaved himself and changed his clothes, he came in before Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I have had a dream, and there is no one who can interpret it. I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it." And Joseph answered Pharaoh, "It is not I. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer." Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "In my dream, I was standing on the banks of the Nile, and 7 cows, fat and sleek, came up out of the Nile and fed on the reed grass. Then 7 other cows came up after them, poor, very ugly and thin. Never had I seen such ugly ones in all the land of Egypt. The thin and ugly cows ate up the first 7 fat cows. But when they'd eaten them, no one would have known that they had done so, for they were still as ugly as before. And then I awoke. I fell asleep a second time, and I saw in my dream 7 ears of grain, full and good, growing on one stalk, and 7 ears withered, thin, and blighted by the east wind, sprouting after them. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 good ears. But when I told it to the magicians, there was no one who could explain it to me." Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, "Pharaoh's dreams are one and the same. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dreams are one. The 7 lean and ugly cows that came up after them are 7 years, as are the 7 empty ears blighted by the east wind. They are 7 years of famine. It is as I told Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. There will come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt. And after them there will arise 7 years of famine, and all the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt. The famine will consume the land. The plenty will no longer be known in the land because of the famine that will follow, for it will be very grievous. And the doubling of Pharaoh's dream means that the thing is fixed by God, and God will shortly bring it about. Now therefore, let Pharaoh select a man who is discerning and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh proceed to appoint overseers over the land, and let 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt during the 7 plenteous years, and take 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt during the 7 plenteous years. And let them gather all the food of these good years that are coming, and lay up grain under the authority of Pharaoh for food in the cities, and let them keep it. That food shall be a reserve for the land against the 7 years of famine that are to befall the land of Egypt, so that the land may not perish through the famine." There we go. Bit of a mouthful. I stumbled a bit on it. I apologize, although there may be a reason for that. I'll get to that in a second. So, there it is. Joseph comes out of prison and is made presentable for Pharaoh. So he shaves, changes his clothes. Heaven forbid Pharaoh be offended by his long hair or his horrible body odor. Um, so he's presented before Pharaoh in a pleasant way, and Pharaoh jumps right in, because I assume because Pharaoh is used to people doing what he asks. Right? I mean, that's he's Pharaoh. Pharaoh has had Joseph brought to him. So Joseph, of course, Pharaoh will expect. Joseph is ready to do whatever Pharaoh asks for. Pharaoh is Pharaoh. What we know a little bit about Egyptian culture in that time of Pharaoh, pharaohs are descended from the gods. They are not strictly just human. So Pharaoh is something very special. and is used to being served by people. People don't argue with Pharaoh. Um, so Pharaoh has no concern about sort of, well, I don't know if this guy's any good. He just jumps right in because the thing is, if Joseph isn't good, if Joseph is to share with Pharaoh what the dream means and Pharaoh doesn't like it, I assume that he could throw Joseph back into jail or kill him. And it doesn't say that in the text, but the fact that no other magicians or wise men, nobody can interpret the dreams, like nobody's even taken a flyer on it, no one's trying at all, suggests to me that they are a little bit worried. Better to be imagined that you have great insight and ability than to offer it and reveal that you have nothing. So I think that the reason nobody can interpret it is that nobody dares, or if they've dared, they have done so badly, and Pharaoh hasn't bought it. So there is something a little bit admirable, I suppose, in Joseph just launching in. Now he's coming out of prison. What has he got to lose? But as long as he's been in prison, and being in prison is not a good place to be, he's doing well in prison, as it were. He has a role to play. He helps people. He has some responsibility and therefore likely some authority. This kid, not as much a kid now as he used to be, Joseph is pretty good at finding his way. So we don't have a sense that Joseph is being tortured. I guess his hair's pretty long, and he's got a beard, and he needed new clothes and he needed to clean up. So it's not ideal, but it's not the worst thing that could be happening to him. Okay, he hasn't been executed. He isn't being tortured. It doesn't sound to me like he's doing any kind of hard labor. He's caring for other prisoners. So he probably does have a little something at stake, and yet he just goes straight ahead, right into it, as if he's not concerned. But even more than that, when the Pharaoh says, so I have this dream that nobody can interpret, and I've heard it said that, when you hear a dream, you can interpret it, Joseph doesn't go, well, yes, actually, I really am very good at that, and I wish you'd called me sooner. He doesn't negotiate. Listen, if I do this for you, could you keep me out of prison? That'd be great. He doesn't negotiate. He doesn't leverage his position. In fact, he gives his power away in saying that it's not me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer. So Pharaoh at that point could say, well, then you know what? Let's get rid of him. Find me another Hebrew who likes dreams. Right? So Joseph is doing, it would seem to me anyway, Joseph is not leveraging or negotiating. I mean, he'd asked 2 years ago of the cupbearer, like, please mention me to Pharaoh. In a sense, plead my case. I shouldn't even be here. So it's taken 2 years. Now he's there. But instead of saying to Pharaoh, listen, now that I've got your attention, could you get me out of this prison? Because I don't deserve to be here. He doesn't say, by the way, if I do this for you, will you let me out of your prison? So I like to think that Joseph is basically trusting. All this time in prison, he has not lost his faith in God or even his faith in some people, if not most people, to do the right thing, to do good things. So, I mean, he could have that expectation that should he be able to help Pharaoh, then Pharaoh will want to respond in a similar way. He'll want to help Joseph. So let's give it a shot. The other thing that I wonder about is, just that willingness to help, regardless of who's asking for help, right? So way back when, he would not have anything to do with Potiphar's wife because that was the wrong thing to do. But other than that, he's always willing to help. So when Potiphar bought him, he helped Potiphar get rich. He was good to him. He didn't sort of hold back and go, man, I hate being owned by this household, so I'll do the minimum to get by. No, he does great work for Potiphar, and Potiphar betrays him. Doesn't even give him a shot. It's the first word out of his wife's excuse me, First word out of his wife's mouth, and boom, he sends Joseph to prison. That'd be a good time to give up on people being helpful. When he's in prison, he helps people who have really nothing to offer him. Right? He is honest with the chief baker, who's going to be executed in 3 days. Right? He didn't have to say anything to the chief baker. Chief baker can't do anything for him. He could have walked away, but he doesn't. He helps him, and I wondered about that a couple days ago. He takes a flyer on the cupbearer. He helps the cupbearer again. At first meeting, there's nothing these people could offer him. They're prisoners. But once he interprets the dream, we realize that the cupbearer is going to be back with Pharaoh. That's not why Joseph helped him. But as a result, he says, well, listen, so when you see Pharaoh, could you put in a good word for me? And of course, again, betrayed, the cupbearer does nothing. So now we're before Pharaoh, the person that people are afraid of. That's how I read it anyway. That's why nobody can interpret the dreams. No one's trying. They're afraid of, and Joseph is not afraid. Joseph gives away his power by saying, this is about God, this isn't about me. He does nothing to negotiate, nothing to leverage. He just helps Pharaoh. So the wondering for me in that is, how freely do I share my gifts? My gifts of faith, the gifts that I simply have. How freely do I share them? Do I share them with those in need, regardless of their status? Do I share them with those in need, regardless of whether or not I like them? Or am I more inclined to help those that I see as the most needy? You are the most deserving of my time. I think what I'm saying is, there's a little bit of me that would be, I would be helping my fellow prisoners, not a problem. I would be helping Potiphar, I got that. But by the time I came around to Pharaoh, I'd have a chip on my shoulder. Pharaoh can have anything he wants. Why does he need my gifts? Pharaoh's got all these seers and magicians. He doesn't need me. So I could see me being less enthusiastic about helping Pharaoh. Unless, of course, I could leverage something from it. So I wonder about those people that I am more likely to help, and the ones that I am less likely to help, and I am invited to wonder about the difference. For me, at this point in the story, what I'm getting is that Joseph doesn't distinguish. He helps everybody, not based on their wealth, their power, their position, but simply based on their need. You're having troubling dreams, I can help you. No matter how many other options you have. Disgraced cupbearer and disgraced chief baker, you have no power, you have no status, you have nothing to offer me, but I'm going to help you because you're troubled by your dreams. Pharaoh, you have it all. You have the power of life and death over everybody, including me and those who would hold me captive. Nobody's going to challenge your decree, your order, and you have a need, and I'm willing to meet that. I remember when I was first ordained, the very first church that I served is in one of the arguably wealthiest communities in Canada. And I had friends fresh out of seminary who were, they were a little dismissive of me going to a wealthy church, as if to say that their needs weren't as important as the needs of those who are poor. And of course, I struggle with that a little bit, but I would say to my colleagues, but we're not talking about feeding people, and that's part of what we may do as part of our ministry, but I'm being called as a spiritual leader, and surely our spiritual needs have nothing to do with our wealth or lack of it. So do the rich not also have needs? Do they not need ministers? Do the rich not need God? I think sometimes it's tempting to assume that because people are rich or powerful that they don't need God, which I think really is a horrible commentary on how you view God, and how you view people, and even how you imagine your life of faith. Anyway, that's just me wandering off of my thoughts, but that's what this is. I wonder. So this does invite me to wonder, do I help people simply based on need, or do I have sometimes another agenda in there? And I'd like to think that most of the time I'm based on needs, but it doesn't hurt me to stop and think about it from time to time. So the story gave me that opportunity. And the other thing that I'm wondering now as I talk, and I referenced it earlier, so when I stumbled over some of the words at the end. I stumbled over the words at the end because I started to think about something, actually, which may undo everything I've just said, by the way. So I stumbled over the words at the end because as I was reading, I suddenly was, well, wait a minute. What is Joseph doing here? So I preface this with, Joseph comes before Pharaoh, and they gotta trim his beard or shave it off, whatever they do. They clean him up, they put him in better clothes, because you don't want to offend Pharaoh with being dirty and stinky, right? So and I mentioned the fact that I think that there are those who are not willing to risk trying to tell Pharaoh what the dreams mean because they're afraid of Pharaoh, and you don't want to mess with Pharaoh. You don't want to tell Pharaoh something that's going to displease him. And you don't want to tell Pharaoh something that turns out to be wrong, and then you look stupid and therefore of no value. So you just sort of stay in the background and say, we can't figure it out. So Pharaoh has the power. Pharaoh asks, you deliver. Pharaoh asks and you're afraid to deliver, you hide. That's how it works. And Joseph comes along and interprets the dreams. Got it. Everything's the way it should be. But then all of the sudden, after he interprets it, he then starts to tell Pharaoh what to do. Now, therefore, let Pharaoh select a man who's discerning and wise and set him over the land of Egypt. Doesn't say, Pharaoh, in your wisdom, you'll figure this out. No, he's telling Pharaoh what to do. He's actually giving him a plan. You need to put somebody in charge. And then you need to, in the 7 good years, take 20%, 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt, and you got to save that. That's what it's a precise plan. Now, it is possible. It is possible that this was the scheme all the time. That this is Joseph's way. Joseph's way in. That's why he didn't negotiate with Pharaoh up front. He knew how this would play out, except that I don't think he knows what the dream means until he interprets it, right? But maybe he's in on God's plan. But we never hear that in the text. We never hear Joseph saying, okay, God, I got it. So there's going to be a dream. Oh, that dream? Okay, so that's cool. Then I could leverage that, right? We never hear that in the stories, but maybe that's the way you see it. So maybe he's being very cunning here. But for me, I think that he's just simply being genuine. And he is taking an incredible risk. He's telling Pharaoh what to do. And I'm going to tell you, nobody tells Pharaoh what to do. You speak when you're spoken to. You give advice, and you give the advice that you are asked to give, not advice you haven't been asked to give. Pharaoh said, tell me what my dream means. But Joseph, in his enthusiasm, then goes on to tell Pharaoh what he should do. If he was playing it safe, he would have said, Pharaoh, I now that I've told you, I'm sure you will figure that out. I am your humble servant. But no, Joseph goes on and tells him what to do. Big risk. I don't know if it's as big a risk as he took when he was a kid, telling his brothers what the dreams meant and how they'd all be bowing down before him. That was dumb. But this seems to be, because it works out, pretty smart. He's learned a few things. And he hasn't learned simply to just shut up and never speak. He's learned how to speak and when to speak. Which is an invitation for me as well. to wonder about how to speak and when to speak about my faith, about my love and concern for somebody. It's not just blurting it out all the time, but it's picking your spots and being brave in the moment when it's required of you. I would say that Joseph was reckless with his brothers when he was a kid. He's now a grown man, and he's choosing his spots. He's not reckless. He's brave in this. And that's the thing that I get to wonder about a little bit today. Looking at some of the things that I have done that may have been reckless, or were they brave? Was it a good time to just put all the cards on the table and boldly go ahead? Or, I don't know, I've gotten it wrong before. I could recite a couple of those to you right now. I'm not going to. But I also think that I've gotten it right a few times. And yeah, it's just something that struck me. I hadn't really thought about that before until I was reading. I was like, wait a minute. He's telling Pharaoh what to do. Gutsy guy. Gutsy guy. Does faith make us brave? Or is being faithful a call to us to be brave, whether we feel it or not? Something about the way I hear this story, I think that it's Joseph's faith that has made him brave. He's not trying to prove anything with his bravery. He's not trying to prove his faith. Well, because I believe in God, I know God needs me to do this, so I'm going to try. I think it's his faith in God is such that he is willing to do things that others aren't willing to do. Not only will I speak truth to Pharaoh by interpreting his dreams, but I will also speak wisdom to him because he's in need. He's troubled by his dreams, and because his people are going to die in the famine unless they prepare for it in advance. Joseph is responding to people's needs, and he knows. I did this yesterday. He believes in a compassionate God who cares about us, not just some kind of power you plug into and use for your own, but a compassionate God who does not want everybody to die in the famine. And so, yeah, knowing that what he's trying to do is the right thing, before he practiced patience, now he's practicing boldness, showing bravery. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to wonder about this for a while today because it's just taken on a whole new light to me. Anyway, let me offer a prayer. Loving God, we thank you for the faith that helps us see things that others may miss. The faith that can allow us to be patient, but also encourage us to be brave. God, as we wonder today, may we discover the gifts of faith for us in this moment, in this time and place, in our lives. And God, as we discover gifts of faith, may we continue to grow in faith. We pray through the Holy Spirit, in the name of Jesus. Amen. Well, friends, I wish you a great day. I hope there is all sorts of growth in faith. I hope if today is a day that you need to be brave, that you have the bravery you need. If today is a day you need to be patient, I hope that you have the patience that you need. I hope in all of those things you feel God's presence. Know that God is actually with you. And know that God's love moves through you in powerful and profound ways. God bless you. We'll see you tomorrow.